Punch
We're going
Out.
to talk about Metroid Samus Returns, which is out on September 15th.
Correct.
Is that right?
Next week.
All of us here have been lucky enough to have played it. I've played a couple of hours. You guys have played a couple of hours. You are actually reviewing
You're really far
it.
along. I'm reviewing it.
So you're probably playing it right now under the desk.
I am. I have it right here, and I'm in a place where I can't talk about.
So we can talk about a lot of things, but there's some Nintendo guidelines for what we can't talk about. Obviously, we wouldn't want to spoil anything for you guys anyway.
Yeah, we'll be careful.
There's certain areas that we can touch. So let's talk about what we've experienced that we can share with the audience that does not ruin their enjoyment of the game if they haven't played Metroid 2.
Sure.
Haven't watched anything.
Well, and like Metroid 2, let's just get this out of the way. It has nothing to do with this game. I mean, you do kill 40 Metroids.
I was going to say, outside of the core concept,
Yeah.
it's
you land
you
on
might
the
as well
planet.
consider it a completely different game.
It's so different, and it's probably the biggest Metroid. It just goes on and on and on and on.
Right.
It has a completely different weapon set than you have. It's more like Super Metroid than anything else. It's like you just have a big place. You're exploring by yourself. It's my favorite type of Metroid, and they got it wrong with Other M, and even a little bit with the Final Prime game, where there's like this
corruption.
universe, and then of course the Hunters games. Like there's all this stuff, and Samus talks to these people, and there's all these things going on. Like this is one of those games where it's like just like Metroid. It's supposed to be like Alien.
Yeah.
You're like alone. There's something hunting you, or you're hunting it. And that's when I say supposed to be that way, that's just because that's how I felt about Super Metroid.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about Zero Mission and Metroid. It's like you don't know who's in that suit either, and you're just all alone, and it's very dangerous, and you die all the time, and you can't find your way around. Like that's what this game's about. And it's really back.
I want to say this is, first of all, definitely the longest of the 2D Metroid games so far. I want to say it's probably 10, 12 hours to 100%.
I feel like it's got to be even more than that.
more than that to
I'm
100%.
I'm at 8 hours now. I'm in area 4, and Sam said that you were up to what, area 7?
Yeah.
So like I'm 8 hours in, and I'm 18%, 21% completion
I'm in
rate.
area
like
6,
yeah. I mean it's
50,
a big
58%.
game. Yeah.
I also think it's probably the hardest 2D
Counts
Metroid
the
game.
hidden missiles and everything.
Yeah. I mean that's
I don't know
Brian
if
and I were talking
percentage
about.
is rooms or weapons and rooms.
I think it's
Probably
map.
both.
I think it's
Usually
map
just map,
completion and
right?
weapons.
Yeah, probably both.
Well, I mean, if you're completing the map, you're going to find those weapons, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's probably a combination.
It's hard
of the
for me
two.
to fathom. I have 40% more to. I've walked over so many Metroid places. It's crazy. It just goes on and on.
But I want to say it's probably the hardest Metroid game, or at least the hardest 2D Metroid game.
Yeah, I've got a lot.
well, Metroid, the first one, is stupid hard.
Well, I think a lot of that is because of the design is inherently obtuse.
Totally.
No map.
Right.
It's not very forgiving in terms of all that, but
This one is not forgiving. Yeah, like
It's not-
every little battle
I
with
die a
the
lot.
Metroid, you gotta be alert. You gotta pay attention. You can't wing it like you can. There are a couple of Super Metroid fights that you can wing.
Yeah. Even with like 3 or 4 full energy tanks, you'll go into just a very simple, there's like, just like the base Metroid 2, there's like 40 Metroids you need to hunt down, right? And you'll fight one of them and 5 or 6 hits or 3 or 4 hits and you'll be blinking like you're about to die.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
the game does dole out like items, weapons, upgrades pretty liberally, like walking around
So
you'll just sort of like see stuff,
We were kind of
but it'll
talking
still
about
kick
that.
your ass.
I think there's a pattern that I didn't recognize till like way deep in the game, where in this game you don't just like in older Metroids, you get an item, you open new areas, you explore those areas, you fight a boss. Item, explore, boss. In this game, you open new areas by killing Metroids. You kill a couple Metroids, you can go to a new area, and then the first things you do in that area is get a new arsenal. It's kind of interesting. So in that area, right next to each other, you'll get like 3 upgrades.
Yeah.
And you'll get like a movement upgrade, maybe a better gun, and then you're prepared to take on the Metroids in the exploration of that area.
Yeah.
And go back and explore other areas.
It is odd
so
like
it has
that,
this
right?
weird like thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I just got this. Then it's like, and this and this and this. And then at the beginning of the game, it's really stacked. So you have so much when you start
They
out.
give you in like the
It was-
first hour, you've got like morph ball, spider ball, wave beam,
Yeah,
like
spider
all this-
ball right in the beginning.
right off the bat.
Yeah,
Like,
and I
and
think
you can go into the ceilings of every room.
yeah.
Until there's spikes that stop you.
that was one of the initial criticisms that I had. It was Sam and I wrote a preview last week, and that was one of the things that I said that kind of bothered me was I feel like there was it wasn't necessarily as rewarding as previous Metroids has been, because I felt like it didn't make you work for a lot of the upgrades at the beginning.
right.
Because like you said, they just like hand out like, I think within the first hour I had found 4 or 5 missile upgrades and like a couple of energy upgrades. So like I was feeling like very overpowered at the beginning.
Right.
But Sam's right. Like the way that they handle that is that they dole out like a bunch, and then you have this long gap where there's no upgrades, and there's places that you can see and you know what you need.
You get so
there,
stuck because
but
of
you
that.
can't. You just don't have that item. Like
Yeah,
there's these.
He was
orange,
texting me like, "What do I need to get past this area?"
Yeah.
I think you're gonna tell that story now.
Yeah, so like the thing about I was stuck yesterday for like a solid hour because I could not figure out where I needed to go to find. There's orange spikes that hang from ceilings or protrude from the walls that you just
and you figured
can't
rightfully
get
so,
past.
like, oh, I just don't have the upgrade.
Right.
You had already gotten all the upgrades in that area, so I was
Yeah.
like telling him like, no, you don't need an upgrade for this.
Yeah.
You just need to figure out a different way.
And that's
just,
an interesting-
just go downwards more because
that's an
this whole
interesting
game
thing
where it's going
about playing a game pre-release is like a guide doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's only like there's only 100 people in the world that have a copy of this game right now. So it's literally like Brian and I and Sam texting each other being like, have you found this? Did you try this? And so that's a really interesting way to play a Metroid game to begin with, because I feel like having played all the Metroid games multiple times, there's never been one Metroid game that I don't reach a point in where I'm like stuck.
Or you look up a map on
And I have to like look up some
Do you
solution.
look at
like,
your map and see whether
yeah,
next
and that's
Metroid
that's
is
what I
and
ended
stuff
up doing is like, so I was so stuck, and then I realized it was just such a bonehead move that there's several rooms that have doors stacked on top of each other. So it's like one door in, and then immediately underneath it is another door out. And I thought that I had explored an area that was one door out, like a second door that led out. There was just a whole nother subterranean level that I completely missed.
Well, the hallway you walk by.
There's a
But
lot of
that's
stuff
the
in this
map's
game
better.
that's sort of just like when you're playing a Resident Evil game and it's like, this door is locked from the other side.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's weird for a Metroid
Yeah,
game. So you
yeah.
have to like kind of shimmy around in a weird way, shoot the back end of the door, open the
Open it
front
up,
of it,
yeah.
and then you can go back through.
I like those puzzles though.
It's cool.
Just
Yeah.
like, don't go this way. You got to find a way into this room.
Yeah, I think just first of all, just the speed of traversal is very quick.
Crazy.
It
Moving
is
around is
blazing fast.
Yeah.
They give you power-ups that
Yeah.
make you faster.
once you get going. I will say, like, one of my gripes was the first few hours of the game when you're weak. There is such an emphasis on that melee combat that like hit Y. There are these bat enemies, these flying sort of vulture things that just swoop at you and knock you back repeatedly. And if you don't counter every time you see them, you'll get knocked back, you lose all your health, you'll die. And it got really annoying after a while because I was like, this is not a fun way to explore a Metroid game. Then you start getting stronger. I actually stopped using melee entirely with them. I just blast them, spam them with missiles,
you can do that.
push past it because you're backtracking
Once you get
a
the
lot.
freezer,
you know?
which is also early,
Yeah.
then they just freeze in place,
yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah.
See, I love the melee mechanic. I
like it too.
8 hours into the game, I'll still prefer to melee because it rewards you with more Aeon crystals.
Yeah.
So like if you can successfully melee an enemy, you just get this flourish of Aeon energy back, which is awesome.
Before even killing it.
Yeah.
I never feel like
Yeah.
I'm running low on that stuff, though.
Oh, you
Really?
will.
I had a
Yeah.
couple of
It's
it.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's all these areas where you have to use these powers to just kind of for survival and traversal. It's really interesting.
I think because I
there's a
have like
couple of
3
things-
or 4 upgrades for it too.
Yeah.
Like you just find upgrades that extend your meter.
So I had, I'm really digging this game. I had a couple of gripes. One was that when you backtrack, like I got a new power that was pretty substantial, and I'm like, oh, now I'm gonna go to the beginning of the game where my ship is, and I'm gonna do all these things I couldn't do, and I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
There were still the locked doors
Yeah.
and all the things.
So-
So it's not as well balanced as some of the games we've played in the franchise.
When I was stuck yesterday, I did that same thing. I was like, okay, well, here's the classic Metroid hook where you just go back and go through the whole map again as far as you've come and just see what you've missed. Just explore the areas because all the items are marked on your map. If you've missed an item, you can see it. It's a little dot that tells you, hey, there's an item here. So there's a lot of times that you can go back and see like, oh, I haven't explored this area thoroughly enough. But I went back to the ship, I spider-balled all the way up and around, and like as soon as I realized there was another area there, I was like, great, now I have an opportunity to explore this area at the very beginning that I totally missed, and then it was sealed by a lock that I just don't have a key for yet. And I was like, damn it.
There were a couple of moments like that, but
Guys,
they-
that's pretty standard Metroid.
but they were also
I don't
they
know
were
if
also
that's a pretty much quality of the game.
I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. I just feel like Pear said,
They
like,
should have given you a little lump of sugar up there, like giving you something
Yeah.
where you
First
go,
area.
oh, that's awesome, I found something.
But I mean, you did backtrack and find stuff though, right?
Not in this case, it was literally like finding locked doors, but there were times where it was better.
Because now I have so much of the map exposed that I can see all, like when I get the thing that opens a yellow door, I can see on the map all the yellow doors. It actually marks it this time.
Yeah.
That's new.
I think the level design in some areas is kind of cumbersome. I don't think it's like nearly as smart as say Super Metroid. I mean, I don't think this game is nearly as good as Super Metroid or Zero Mission. I think it's very strong. It's a very good game, but it's got some areas that are just sort of just the way they weave together is really more of a chore than it is actually fun to get through. And the game kind of pushes you to go back and forth and play through a lot of these areas multiple times because you'll have to return back to these sort of chambers that tell you here's where your next Metroid is. Yeah. You can go hunt those on your own, but it's like sometimes you're at a loss. So
but they're teleporters too. I mean, they did play some teleporters to let you bypass certain areas. I know exactly what areas you mean.
Right.
Like some places are like, I know how to get through here. It's just a chore because of all the time the enemies dropping. And so, but I feel like the teleporters help a little bit with that.
Yeah, there was this one spot in the game where I've jumped up 15 times now, and every single time I get hit by the same exact enemy.
Yeah, I know the
and
exact
you know the
one you're
spot,
talking
right?
about,
And I'm like, that's not a well-designed spot if that happens every single time.
There's also a couple
Maybe
of,
you're not a well-designed spot.
I'm not a well-designed spot.
There's also a couple of jumps or ledges that will pair you with two enemies that melee you in rapid succession, right? So like you'll make a jump just enough to grab on and pull yourself up on the ledge, and then as soon as you do, it's like you pull yourself up and then you got to hit like YY at the exact right time, or XX I guess, at the exact right time, or else you're gonna get hit by one of those and it knocks you all the way back down and you got to do the jump again.
Yeah, you gotta be more. You gotta be careful in certain respects. But the other gripe is just the bosses so far. You know, the first couple of hours in, the bosses you fight are very. I don't want to say repetitive because they do evolve, but they're small and uneventful, and you don't have that carrot you have in a traditional Zelda game where like you beat that boss and you get a cool item.
Yeah.
It's not structured.
No,
like
6 hours in, I fought one or two of the same bosses that I fought 30 minutes in, and I'm like, well, that's part of the design of having 40 things to take down, but
it changes, right? So it's definitely not the same at the point where Sam is. As to
it's very different
we're
now.
Still hanging out.
That's about all I can say.
Yeah, I miss things like the crate encounter, or even things like Meta Ridley and Prime. You know, like bosses that happen halfway through the game, because I feel like I'm there, but I'm still fighting the
what
same.
about just Chozo lore breaks?
Yeah.
Like I haven't had any background. It's just me fighting enemies. So.
It's literally like there's a cutscene at the beginning that's actually handled really cool. I really like the way that that sort of 2D comic book style like look for those intro sequences, and then that's it. Like there's zero exposition beyond that.
I'm really far in this game, and like it's just me and killing.
Yeah.
I mean, we know there's definitely some more stuff in there that we haven't found yet that we need to explore before we can make that call. But what the classic Metroid games, you know, Super Metroid or Metroid Prime have done really well is like they start the narrative by showing you your foe. Something like that, right? Like you'll see Ridley taking the Metroid in Super Metroid, and like that becomes the through line. You see this creature again and again, and like it really, it's like your nemesis is there from the get go. Which this game is different. It's an extermination mission. Like get in there, take out all the Metroid. So it feels a little different.
So it is. I mean, it is very much like Aliens to the original Metroid Alien, right? Like.
I mean, yeah, even Aliens was like about saving a little girl and like bringing her to this space colony, which doesn't go well. But this game, I think it's because it's so specifically rooted in like a Game Boy game. You know, like they tried their best to add some narrative around the edges, but it's not really there. There isn't Chozo lore. There isn't scanning statues. I mean, you have a scan visory thing, but it shows you walls you can bomb and stuff. I think like visually, like this game is kind of muddy. Like it's just like it's 3DS textures, right? And it looks a little better when you pop the slider on, and it's really quick. So I'll forgive it for that.
You don't like the visuals?
I think it's fine. I think when we play this game in 5 years, it's not going to be good.
So let me pitch you on something. Metroid has always been like this game with very flat backgrounds, and it's all about the 2D space you're in. And what I like about these graphics, despite all odds, because I love sprites and I think it's ridiculous that it's done in polygons. Like I completely agree with all that criticism. it gives you every single hallway and every single room is a little window you're peering into.
I like that.
This really cool world.
Yeah.
And like even though you're flipping around outside and like just between a ceiling and a floor, in the background there's like ruins of like a civilization.
Yeah, it's pretty
which
cool.
are super cool. Or
I dig that a lot.
Creature
Or
or
be
a
a
dead
big
body.
creature.
Or,
Yeah.
I definitely dig that.
Sometimes I
think,
stop and I just look, and sometimes it's animated. It's not
Yeah.
just static. Sometimes I turn on the 3D because it's just this crazy like mirrored crystal background.
they're like little dioramas. I totally dig that. I think that like my issue is that like there isn't a single like texture in this game that I'm like, wow, that looks awesome.
You're talking about the technical aspects, which I
Yeah.
think it's the 3DS's limitation at this point. We're
Yeah.
spoiled by Switch.
We are,
It
which
does
like
zoom
I
in for like attacks and stuff.
Yeah.
That looks smooth when
it does. It does.
Not the
Yeah, I
elevator
mean,
scene.
but they're not.
The-
Look, that looks
What is up with
blurry.
that?
The elevator scene looks like a weird like Saturday morning cartoon situation.
Yeah, which I'm kind of okay with. Had the rest of the game looked more like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the bells and whistles around the sound effects, the music is really cool. It's a lot of it's directly
Yeah,
lifted
music's
from
really
Prime, but it just totally works.
Prime mixed with, then there's tunes from Super.
Yeah.
Which are, I guess Prime had some of that too, like the lava level.
It redid.
Also, the remixes of the original Game Boy tunes and themes are really well done. Really well done.
the game sounds fantastic. If you're wearing headphones with
Yeah.
it too,
Yeah.
it's just like it's one of the best sounding 3DS
Yeah, it
games.
sounds really
music wise. I love the music. It's got all this nostalgia.
I can't wait for you guys to get a little bit further, just because the traversal becomes, you get these things that make it so you just like kind of mow through enemies, and that's like that feeling in Zelda when you go back with your better weapons and you're just
Right.
like, blah, 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 blah. I need to go back to this area, and you just cut through it. It has that, but I think this game is so big that we're all expecting that to happen a lot earlier. And I completely agree. Like now that all I want to do is play Metroid right now.
Yeah.
Like I want to end this so I can go play Metroid, and I'm there. But it took a lot longer into the game for me to feel like I was like powerful and I could go do new stuff.
I'm on a text chain with Zach and a bunch of other of our friends, and like the first few hours of that game, I was like, I like this, but I don't love it. And then it was weird because like 5 or 6 hours in, it started to click a little more. At least it was either that or I started to sort of understand like the failings of this game, what works and what doesn't work. And I just sort of nestled into what this game was. And I started really liking it. I think the sort of second half of the game, when you're a lot more powered up, when traversal becomes a lot more interesting, when mowing through
forward to
enemies
it.
is more fun, it really becomes something all its own. And I really dig it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the very basic enemy that you mentioned, the bat,
bat, yeah.
right? Like it takes like 5 shots to take out.
Yeah.
Right. And so it does feel like for the longest time you are reliant on the melee, because then it just takes 2 shots or something right after the melee. It's super quick.
Yeah.
But like it does slow down the game a little bit.
Well, there's always like one
Until
enemy
you
in the
get
room, no matter
more
how
shot
strong
power.
you get, who's like kind of a pain in the ass. Like there's these guys that I'm fighting now that it just like in the area I'm in, when they show up, I'm like,
the little Galagas.
oh, you little. No, they're. I don't want
I
to
like
spoil
those
it.
little
guys.
guys.
I like those guys.
Yeah, those guys I can handle.
Yeah.
These are like these little rock balls that are just like I'm.
Oh yeah.
The other thing,
yeah.
the other thing I wanted to mention was just how beautifully Samus animates.
Oh, God, yeah.
I think that the way that character moves through that world is so gorgeous.
She plants
and-
herself down and just goes,
Yeah, and
shoots
like
all around
just
her head.
even watching. So there's infinite spawn points for some enemies that are great to spam for like health and Aeon and missiles, just like in any Metroid game. And what's really nice about that is I like watching the animation of her like aiming, putting her arm to balance, putting one arm on the other to balance the shot, and then watching the recoil like in her shoulders. It's just really smooth and it's really thoughtful animation. The way that her arm tracks when you hold in the left button, and the different animations
It
that
looks
come
so
out of
good. So
the
smooth,
different
huh?
animations that
Yeah.
come out of the directions that you're aiming. Like if you
melee
if you're-
forward and shot backwards.
if you melee
So
forward
good.
and shot backward, it's so cool because she does like a full, like a really cool like half spin and shoots behind her like this, and like I mean her character in and of itself is fantastic.
Yes.
And like any
Yeah.
Metroid, you can upgrade the armor, and it looks cooler and cooler.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling. I always forget about that, but like by the end of like say Metroid Prime 2, you're
dude,
in this
yeah.
like crazy like black and
light
white.
Yeah, the black suit.
You're like
I love that
jacked
suit.
out.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool.
It's really neat.
No, I mean, from what I've played, I'm really liking it. I think it's a really strong return for the Metroid franchise after, let's face it, 2 slight missteps, right,
Yep.
in
Yeah.
the series, one on 3DS
And like what
one
like
other
a
M.
full decade without a 2D Metroid game.
Yeah.
Think about like I just want to gush real quick. We didn't know this game existed at E3.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
And then we
crazy.
found out, and now we're all playing it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's effing awesome.
Yeah.
That we found out about this in June, and in September, like we're playing it, and it's like it's like a 10, 15 hour
and it's
game.
good.
Yeah, it's
and
really
it's
good.
really good. Like I will say, like I think we kind of front ended this conversation with a lot of our criticisms.
Yeah.
But I really am enjoying this game a lot. Like
we
I
could
don't.
be playing other things right now. That's what
I'm
I
also
think about.
I'm also playing Destiny. I just got a real thing for shooting monsters in the face. So
My only, and you guys have said this before, is like I wish it was on Switch.
yeah, me
Because
too.
what you're describing as kind of like the muddy textures and things would not be an
That would
issue
look
on there.
better.
Well,
Maybe I'll get a port.
So we've
I would
seen,
love it on the Switch.
I forget what it's called, but there's a 3DS emulator that people have ripped. They've ripped the 3D models from, or like the entire games, and games like Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, even the Pokemon games, Smash Brothers and stuff like that. They look gorgeous when they're removed from that,
They scale up.
420p screen or whatever.
Really?
They scale up. So I think somewhere in here is a game that's going to look incredible on Switch one day, but they're going to make us double dip. So you're going to have to play it on 3DS first.
Yeah, or when Mercury Steam is done with this game, can we put them on the next 2D Metroid maybe for the Switch while Metroid Prime 4 is in the works by whatever magical team that is of House Elves that's working on that. Would be great. I have a lot of faith in this team after seeing just the authenticity. This feels, looks,
That's
and
really
sounds
good.
like
This
Metroid.
bodes well for Prime 4 too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
Metroid's in a good place again, which is wonderful to say in 2017.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much for watching our little discussion. If you want to watch the entire episode of Nintendo Voice Chat, look for us on IGN or find us at youtube.com/Nintendo Voice Chat. Check it out.